All right, right now, WeatherNation is so honored to have in flight meteorologist and flight director Nikki Hathaway, and also Paul Flaherty joins us by phone too. They're from the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center, and the folks that are gathering such valuable and priceless information in the storms, the hurricane hunters, and several missions have already taken place this weekend and this week for Marco, and now especially for Laura. Nikki, thank you for your time. Can you discuss how those routes, the flying routes, are determined when you're going to be flying through or around these systems?
Yes, sir. So essentially here at the Aircraft Operations Center, we have various different aircraft that all serve a different purpose. And so today on our flight, we were on the G4. And so the G4 is going around collecting data well outside the storm, really around the envelope and even out ahead of the storm to make sure we're capturing data that's essential for steering flows, and essentially going to be beneficial to the flight track once that data goes into those computer models. So that's what the G4 does. The G4 is going all around the storm, even out ahead of the storm, while our P3 aircraft are actually going directly through the storm. And so they're doing different figures like a butterfly or a figure 4 pattern. And so the flight track, the flight routes might vary depending on the aircraft you're looking at.
Now, it's interesting. We saw you and we saw previous flights go around, especially for Marco. It was this past weekend. There were one of the flights that were looking into the steering flow, and then that information went into the weather models. Then there ended up being a big shift in Marco's track. Are things like that common, where that data you gather around the storm, all around the storm, then helps to create a better forecast?
Yes, it's extremely important. So essentially, when the G4 is out there sampling well outside the storm, that data is crucial for the models to make sure they're tracking and seeing the same things that we're actually seeing real time as we drop bombs from the plane, flight level data, things like that. And then all that data is going back into the computer models, like you said. And things like this Getty models, various ensembles are able to pick up on those corrections, on that inputted data, and do its best job at essentially correcting that path. So that's why we're flying all the way around that envelope, really capturing data well outside the storm to make sure we're getting a better handle on where that track is.
And while you're speaking, we're looking at some footage of some of the planes that are going off. There are a variety of them, but they're very large, sitting low to the ground, propellered planes. So it leads me to my next question. I'm sure everybody asks, how, from your experience, from the takeoff, the duration, the type of flight, how does this differ from a commercial flight experience?
Sure. So they're going to be very different, actually. We joke around because most of the time when you're talking to ATCR pilots, they'll be like, okay, do you want to divert? And, our job is to go straight into the weather. So we won't be diverting around the weather like most of the aircraft, commercial aircraft would be. We're going straight through the weather that most of the commercial planes are avoiding, right? So obviously more turbulence is to be expected, heavy rain rates, things like that. Typical weather that you would want to avoid flying commercial.
So it's interesting that instead of avoiding them as you would on a normal flight from A to B, you're going right into some of the hazards. Nikki, one more question for you, and maybe Paul, if he wants to answer it too. How are some of the conditions? Maybe talk about the most difficult part of your job.
So I think, in general, probably the most difficult part of our job working here at NOAA's Aircraft Operations Center is we are here to protect and serve the public and do our job regardless of whether the threats are coming towards us or towards someone else. So living in Florida and flying out of Florida, we often have to leave the area with our aircraft to continue flying whenever a storm is threatening the state. And so that can be difficult because you're leaving your loved ones behind to sort of fend for themselves while you go out and continue working. So I would say that's probably the most difficult part of the job.
And I've seen some of the flights be up to 8 hours. Is that how long they can be? Can they be even longer than 8 hours?
Yeah, we can fly anywhere between, sometimes they're on the shorter end, maybe 7.5 if we're lucky, but a lot of times 8, 9, even up to 10 hours on a flight. And I think anyone who's flown commercially will know that any flight day is exhausting. It's a little bit tough on your body. And so when we fly long days, consecutive flights, it can wear you down quite a bit. But on the flip side, we are all very passionate about what we do. And so you're sort of countering the fatigue that naturally happens when you're in a cycle like that, long 12-hour or more days in a row, by the motivation and dedication and excitement we have to do a job that we know has a profound impact on other people's lives. and allows them to make the very important decisions. So it counters that. And we love what we do, so we're happy. We don't ever want a storm to be out there, but if it's going to be out there, we want to get out there and make sure we're collecting that data so people can get out of the way when they need to.
We thank you for that, and that's my again. I'll ask one more quick question, because I asked what the most difficult part of your job, but maybe what's the most rewarding part of your job?
Let me take that, Nikki.
Sure.
I would say for me, the most rewarding part of the job is to find out we made a difference. And as you can imagine, when you have a deadly strong system heading towards a population, knowing you don't ever want people to have to leave, but knowing they did when we've put all this effort in to collect this data, get bounced around long days, day after day, to find out that people evacuated and not getting that information about how many people may have perished inside the storm because they didn't leave. So knowing we were part of that chain, to get that information to the models, to the forecasters, to get that information to you in the media, to the emergency managers, to ask people to leave. And when they do, that's something that I feel really good about every day.
All right. And did you fly into Laura at all this week or this weekend?
Yes, sir. That was the storm that we just flew today. And we've also been flying Marco. So it depends on which aircraft, but we've been flying both the G4 and the G3.
Okay, I know every storm is named differently. They all have their own personalities, and I've never been within one on a hurricane flight, but how has Laura been so far?
So far on our flight today, it was, pretty much to be expected. We got to see the dense cirrus on part of our flight. Because we were serving out in front of the storm too, the steering flow, we actually got to get pretty close to Marco. And so we got to see the low level center of Marco below our aircraft because we were up at 45,000 feet on the G4. So that was pretty cool, to be able to sample the environment that will be steering Laura, but also get to see Marco down below. That was a pretty neat experience today.